Hi, this is Rebecca with Focus on America. And for those of you who may not know, Focus on America is a grassroots organization formed to promote individual liberty, family values, and the U.S. Constitution by actively participating in the political process. Focus on America is inspired and compelled by our forefathers, men who risk everything to ensure our freedoms. We encourage Americans to be informed members of their communities, to recruit and develop candidates to restore God-given, constitutionally guaranteed liberties, and to replace elected officials who do not represent their constituency or American values. We meet the third Saturday of each month at various places across the state, and we host numerous special events like the recent Alabama gubernatorial debate. You can find more information at focusonamerica.us. We have a public page on Facebook, a private page. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and Rumble. So be sure and share this information with your friends and family. We're starting to host, this is a continuation of our candidate series, where we bring candidates on to jump right into the tough issues. So today, I am honored to have with us Maurice Mccaney, who is a candidate for State House District 1. And again, that is Maurice Mccaney. He is a candidate for State House District 1. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then I'm going to hand it over to him, and we'll jump right in, as we say. So he was born in Florence, Alabama, to James and Wanda Mccaney. He's married to Lorraine Mccaney, and they have one child, James Mccaney II. He is a lifelong resident of Florence, Alabama, and his family incorporated Victory Ministries in 1991. So I think they have a Fellowship Church Ministries and a Victory Christian Academy, which is a private Christian school serving the Shoals area. He attended the Florence Christian Academy in Florence, Alabama. He graduated from Sanford University in Birmingham, Alabama, with a Bachelor of Arts degrees in Political Science and Sociology. The following year, he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in English. And in 2001, he graduated from the Cumberland School of Law at Sanford University in Birmingham with a Juris Doctor of Law. And he was licensed in 2014 by the state of Alabama to practice law. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let you tell us a little bit about yourself. And, we talked about this a little bit when we weren't recording. So many times we hear politicians that will come up and they'll have all the touch points that sound so good. I'm conservative, Second Amendment.
Right.
I'm going to stand for your rights. And then they sound good. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else. Oh, that sounds good. So I don't know anything about them, but I believe those things, so I'm going to vote for them. Then they ride off into the Montgomery sunset to just become a part of the good old boy network. So why don't you tell us, you've had plenty of opportunity to run. Why now? And why are you running?
Sure. First off, thank you for having me. This is indeed an honor. I believe that in order for our communities, our states, and our country to return back to those Judeo-Christian principles upon which our nation was founded, that organizations like yours and strong conservative Christian groups, they have to be integral in that revival, if you will, of our nation. So thank you very much for the opportunity. As far as being throwing my hat in the ring, so to speak, it really was very similar to your story about how your organization started. After years of just seeing politician after politician make promises, as you say, and go to Montgomery or go to Washington, D.C., and do the exact opposite, it just became very frustrating. And I would complain and complain, and I would vote and I would vote. And quite literally, it was almost as if God were saying, there's only so much complaining you can do. There's only so much voting that you can do and it be effective. Why not put your trust in me and make this a, a ministry where your campaign is not just about being elected and serving in Montgomery, but it is more about having a light and me having a light in Montgomery. Now, that's not to say that God doesn't have other ministers and Christians down in Montgomery, but for my county of Lauderdale, I just do not believe that there is a consistency in representing Christian principles. And that may be controversial to some, and it may become a soundbite for others, but I believe that your actions and the way that you vote indicate your heart.
I totally agree with you. And I've said this on other podcasts, but this is a perfect example of for me to say it again. So those of you who listen, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but my grandfather was a minister, and he told me many times in my life, Rebecca, it's just as wrong to know you should do something and not do it as it is to do the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
And that resonates with me. Not that I've always done it, but as I've gotten older, that recollection of that reminder and that planting of that seed resonates with exactly what you just said. So I appreciate that. With that being said, I wanted to ask you about a couple of different things. We hear that there is so much corruption. Alabama is a conservative state. However, they're also in the top 5
Right.
corrupt states in the United States.
Number 4.
Do you believe that's true?
I have met a lot of the legislators in Montgomery, and many of them, I believe, are good Christian people. I'm not sure where the disconnect is, because for every one good bill, we get 3 or 4 that just make you scratch your head, and you think, why? Why are you professing to be a conservative, confessing to be a Christian, and we come up with bills that I'm sure we will discuss and get into? Um, part of the part of what I believe is the issue and the problem with Montgomery is that all of these special interests, the lobbyists there, wield great power. If you just take a look, not just in my race, but in all the races across the state, if you just take a look at where campaign donations are coming from, you'll see that if I profess that I have a principle and I am standing against something, then why would I take huge amounts of money from people I know profess the opposite? That's been something that I have really been prayerful about and really been just contemplating, because when I'm elected, I believe that those same organizations will want to contribute and say, "Oh, okay, we support you now." But that support and those contributions oftentimes come with strings attached, which I will unequivocally inform them, while you may contribute and I may take your contribution, that does not mean that I will toe the party line. It My convictions and my principles just will not allow me to do so. But it seems as though the longer you're there, the more apt it becomes that your principles and your views change.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned PACs, have you accepted any PAC money? And do you believe that perhaps we should eliminate or limit the amount that PACs can contribute to campaigns?
I most definitely think there should be a limit. Um, because if you're getting tens of thousands of dollars, for instance, from the Alabama Education Association, that just is an insurmountable amount of money that tends um, to kind of sway you. I mean, you look and you say, "Oh, well, they've given me $50,000, and they want me to pass this legislation or vote this way." That really it really becomes human nature. To you are fighting against. It becomes a much tougher spiritual battle in saying, am I going to yield or am I going to stand up? Now, the PAC donations that I have gotten are from proven Christian conservative organizations. They're not from um, organizations with hidden agendas to undermine the core Christian values that I believe are so important, as I said earlier, in sparking a revival of our nation. So, all pacts are not evil, just like all people are not evil. Um, but but I am very careful in gathering information and understanding where my donations are coming from. I will tell you that my campaign is primarily self-funded, which is it is a walk of faith in and of itself, because I'm an attorney by trade, and so that's how I feed my family. So we're making sacrifices as a family because we truly believe that this is a door that God has opened and that God wants to utilize us as ministers of His gospel down in Montgomery.
That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. And, another big that we're seeing a lot when we're doing research, we have a candidate research tool on our webpage at focusonamerica.us. And we've been not necessarily shocked, but the number of PACs or money from Big Pharma. One that we see that some people aren't aware of is BCA for the Business Council of Alabama. They have been they were for the gas tax and
Mm-hmm.
they were for mandatory vaccines, all the things that conservative Christians would not stand for. So, those are things we're seeing a lot of the politicians and candidates that are being uh, receiving endorsements from BCA, and we've actually kind of ran the opposite direction when we see BCA. So it's nice to hear someone's using that discernment to make the wise choices for them and their campaign. And with that being said, how do you? It is a spiritual battle. I know that
Mm-hmm.
when we are in Montgomery and we're down there trying to get bills passed for the people, it's like we're swimming in a den of snakes. How are you going to, when you're elected, how are you going to protect yourself from that spiritual battle and something that we know is there? How are you going to protect yourself from that?
Well, most people only focus on developing a relationship with God through salvation, and for most Christians, that's it. They go no further, and that's fine. God will accept that. God, He obviously wants more, but it is His desire that all come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. But for me, it's going to be a focus on fellowship. How much time do I spend in the Word? How much time do I spend in prayer? How much time do I spend being sensitive to the Holy Spirit and allowing God to direct and guide me? So for me, that's going to be paramount, because the challenges, the temptations, and the dangers will be all around. I never professed to be perfect, but much like David, I think that's why it is so beautiful what the Bible does in giving us these stories of flawed men, showing that they have flaws, but in their core, in their heart of hearts, their desire was never to sin against God. It was always to be obedient to His call and His voice. So, and I believe that surrounding myself with strong Christians who are in politics. There are many strong Christians that I know in Montgomery that I will lean heavily upon, because it I already know that it will be difficult to say no or to say yes to certain things. But I really, it's one of those challenges. You ever have those challenges that you look forward to encountering? That's kind of how I view this. I look forward to being an example. I look forward to being a light and showing that it doesn't have to be politics as usual, and you don't
Oh,
have to succumb.
yes, absolutely. I mean, and you know, a lot of times, or most of the time, if we allow it, the things that are insurmountable to man, God can do through us.
Yes.
And that's the exciting part, to know that it's not within my power, but within His power, and nothing, absolutely nothing is impossible with God. So, that's refreshing within itself. Just to hear those words as a fellow Christian, that means a lot to me. And over the past couple of years, we've learned the importance of how important it is to have people who in office who are going to take a stand, and how to protect ourselves and our liberties. And obviously, that's why we're having this conversation. But would you support a bill or legislation that would limit the powers of the state health officer? And if so, how would you propose we limit those?
Absolutely. So, it was amazing to me. So, Lauderdale County in Florence, specifically, is a small town. It's a quiet town, and we don't have big industries here. It's a lot of it is small business, businesses that have been in operation for years, handed down from generation to generation. And when the COVID mandates came down, it crippled a town like Florence for for such a long time. There are businesses that were closed during the COVID mandates that just simply have not reopened, and to me, that's unacceptable. Your health, your personal health, should be your personal decision. There should not be any requirements or mandates that are issued by the government that would restrict your personal freedom of choice. Now, I know people will say, well, what about abortion? That's a personal choice as well. And I vehemently disagree. The Bible tells us that at the moment of conception, that is human life. Therefore, you're not making a personal decision. You're making a decision about another human being, which is not acceptable. So, uh, the authority given to the state health officer has to be reined in. And I know that they were saying, well, it's a state of emergency. Well, we have to really look at what we're defining as a state of emergency when we're talking about imposing restrictions on personal liberties and freedoms.
Right. Do you have a proposal or suggestions, or how you may suggest that we limit the powers of the state health officer?
Sure. Obviously, that starts with examining what powers are already granted, and so we have to look at those and place them up against our Constitution. The Constitution has to be the driving force behind legislation. Any legislation that comes in conflict with the Constitution has to be voted against or not even brought to the floor. And so, therefore, a reorganization and a rewriting of the authority given to the state health officer has to be done, and that can only be done by looking at what powers are currently there, stripping powers that infringe upon personal liberties and freedoms, and then crafting authorization that actually, while protecting the public, it also frees the public to make personal decisions about things such as the COVID vaccination.
Okay, thank you. So, another topic that's really important to a lot of our members is K through 12 education. And it has been widely claimed that Common Core does not exist in Alabama. In fact, I was told that at the State House several times this year, that Common Core does not exist. However, there's been a contradictory example of it with just a passing of the Numeracy Act this year.
Sure.
That act cost taxpayers over 90 million and to provide math coaches. Well, you think, okay, well, our children need math coaches, but this isn't math coaches for the children, it's
Right.
math coaches for teachers. And if there's no Common Core, why do we need the Numeracy Act? And another area of concern is, we have the Common Core, mask mandates, critical race theory, or its new name, social emotional learning. What are your thoughts on that, or how would you address those issues?
So I am baffled by how our legislators can inform us that we have eliminated Common Core. I believe it was 2018 or 2019. They say that I think it was 2019. They say we eliminated Common Core. Then you look at the Numeracy Act and you look at the Common Core Act and how it was implemented. And it is a word for word transfer of Common Core to the Numeracy Act. So how can you've just changed the name. So, and that's kind of what we have done in education. So prior to Common Core, there was the Literacy Act, which was the same thing. And prior to that, there was the No Child Left Behind Act. All of those have been abject failures. Yet all we do is change the name and think, oh, let's throw more money at it, and that will solve the problem. Common Core, the Numeracy Act, or whatever iteration or nomenclature that they want to attribute to it, has to be eliminated. It does not work, and the very fact that we have to spend $90 million to have tutors and coaches teach our teachers how to teach children is ludicrous. And it should be a shining beacon that it is not working. It's not the children and it's not the teachers. It is the curriculum. And as far as the curriculum goes, so I am a huge parent choice advocate. My parents, as you stated earlier, for 31 years have operated a private Christian school here in Florence, Alabama. We've had 4 graduating classes over that period of time. And by and large, what we have seen is, are you going to have a small percentage of parents who are not active in their children's education? Yes, that's no one would doubt that. But by and large, all parents want the exact same thing for their children. They want their children to be safe, to be healthy, and to be well educated so that they can create a future for themselves. The current curriculum and the current method and ideology in our educational systems do not do that. About a month or so ago, I went down to speak before the House Ways and Means Committee on the Parent Choice Act. And without a doubt, the legislators, their sentiment was, we cannot trust parents to make the right choices for their children. And as I sat there listening to that, before I spoke, I thought, well, whose children are these? Are they yours, Mr. or Mrs. Legislator? Or do they belong to their parents? And, mixing in critical race theory, which is an abomination, it comes from a demonic place. Anytime that you would teach a young child that because of their skin color, either they are due some sort of obeisance or deference or special privilege, or B, that because of their skin color, they have to give that obeisance or preference to a child of another skin color, that divisiveness is profitable. That is just the bottom line. The division that's going on in our country is profitable to those who encourage it and to those who maintain and stoke the fires of divisiveness. So, critical race theory, this social emotional learning, um, none of that has any place in our education system, because what it leads to are other things like the gender identity instruction. Listen, a kindergarten through third grade has no place. I have a 12-year-old. I don't want anyone else other than me and his mother teaching him about issues of sexuality, let alone a school. So I just think that it is my plan and part of my platform that parents, the education system needs to be more transparent. We need to eliminate Common Core, critical race theory, social emotional learning. Uh, we need to get back to the fundamental basics that caused our education system to grow in the first place. Listen, we can't remain 47th in math and 50th overall for year after year after year and think that what we're doing works. It just is not. Parents have to be involved. Parents are have the God-given right to be the primary educators or decision makers about the education of their children, and that's what I plan to do. I will support legislation in that vein. And the last thing on education, you know, this past term I counted. I did a rough search and just typed in curriculum or education, and there were roughly 26 bills proposed to deal with education or the education curriculum. Not one single bill was proposed to put prayer back into schools. Not a single one. Even though the vast majority of our legislators, Republican and Democrat, profess to be Christians, no one thought it important enough to propose putting prayer back into schools. We all know what the answer is. We just refuse to admit that God's way is the only way.
Oh, but because so many times we've become complacent in the world's view instead of God's view. Uh, and that's the reason we're in the position we're in. So, would it be safe to say, when it came to mask mandates and vaccine mandates for children, that you would also support parental choice in that as well?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I know that there are parents that were extremely concerned about the COVID epidemic, and again, that is their God given right. Those are their children. If they believe and would want their children to participate in vaccination and wear masks to school, that is totally their right. However, any mandate to do so, I would oppose.
Okay, thank you. And another thing before we get on to it is that the state of Alabama in fiscal year 2021 had expenditures of over $31 billion.
Hmm.
Reportedly, there was a $1.3 billion surplus, and taxes are still rising. So, what would you propose the state do with this excess funding? What about other legislators who were conservative, yet they voted and were prepared and told they had to support the gas tax? Would you repeal those? What in regard to taxes, where do you stand on that?
Sure. So, my opponent, the incumbent, voted for the gas tax. Now, I do not know what the explanation or the reasoning is. I don't know that I've heard any explanation as to why our conservative legislators voted for the gas tax. I know that there were some thoughts that it may help with commerce and transportation and the like. But the very first thing that I will attempt to do is to repeal the gas tax. Um, I just saw a report today that the price of oil per barrel is going up to $110 per barrel, which means that gas will rise somewhere uh, $4.30 to $4.40, somewhere around there. Well, 10 cents of that is gas tax. How is that possible? That our legislators thought that the hardworking families um, of Alabama would agree to a gas tax that they didn't even ask us about, by the way. Well, let me step that back. There were there were questionnaires about what a proposed gas tax, whether it would be supported or not. Um, but there was no vote by the people on it. So that's got to go. Grocery tax. I believe that's another area where we can benefit the families of Alabama is by eliminating or significantly reducing the gas tax. Um, I'm sorry, the grocery tax. Um, it is, again, I'll use my own personal example. Um, my parents' school, it is becoming harder and harder for families to afford to make the choice to have a private school education. And also, I would propose that the education tax dollars for each child follow that child so that parents can have that choice. But yes, there is a lot of wasteful spending, and there's no transparency. The proposed fiscal year 2022 budget for the state of Alabama is 503 pages long. Um, to me, that's not transparent. There's a lot of charts and graphs, and oh, the money is going to this section. But what does that actually mean? Do we know what our money is being spent on? Where does what does happen with with this surplus? Where does it go? Does it go into the education trust fund? Does it go into the general fund? Where does it go? So there has to be much more transparency in our government. And
Well, I mean, for example, there's an amendment that's coming up on May 24th as well that
mhm,
House leadership Nathaniel Ledbetter
mhm,
actually sponsored. And though I love state parks, I live close to two. My family utilizes them, loves them. Um, I'm not against state parks. However, a vote yes for Amendment 1 would allow the state to borrow over $80 million
right.
for our state parks, but yet we have an excess in funding of 1.3 billion. So if we have an excess, why are we using taxpayer dollars to borrow and going further in debt for something that we have funds to pay for? I mean, like you said, the accountability just isn't there.
Well,
So we definitely need to get back to that.
well, the uncomfortable truth is that unfortunately, it would appear our elected officials do not believe that the voters will hold them accountable for their actions. And unfortunately, they've been proven right more often than not because year after year after year, they are reelected and we get more of the same, which is another reason why I made the decision to campaign for District 1 is that people need an option. People need to know that there are conservative Christians out there who will not bow to big business, who will not bow to these large PACs, and who will speak for the people, and who will listen and represent uh, the people of Lauderdale County.
And I'm thankful to hear that, and thank you for your insight on that. I did want to. One of the questions we asked during our gubernatorial debate was if they were aware of the Montgomery pick list. Some said yes, some said no. So for the listeners who aren't aware of what the Montgomery Pig List is, it is the GOP leadership um, that actually goes and chooses who they want elected. And typically it is the incumbent, and they put all their support behind that incumbent. And we have to ask ourselves, if we're going to become informed voters, why are they doing that? Is it simply because so they will be able to continue the status quo? I can't think of any other reason. So are you aware of the Montgomery Pig List?
So I am aware that I am aware that there is sentiment, if not action, to support and ensure that incumbents are reelected. And the way it was put to me when I asked the question at why, they said, "Well, if you win the election, we would do the same for you." And my response is, but if I am not representing the people, if I am doing a poor job, I wouldn't expect you to support me and to want me to be reelected. I would expect that you would lead the charge and have me ousted from office. The American Conservatives Union rated my opponent, the incumbent, the most liberal Republican representative. When you look at the Alabama Policy Institute for last year, there were 12 Democrats ranked and rated more conservative than he was. And the most recent poll coming from my voters guide, I as the challenger was voted more conservative than he, based upon his voting record. And that is astounding to me that if 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 in fact the establishment or those in leadership would continue to support incumbents who they know are not conservative. That's astounding to
Well,
me.
absolutely. And it sounds like we need to redefine leadership
Right,
for them.
right.
Because obviously they don't understand what true leadership is, or they're in it or they're in it for the wrong reasons. So, you know, as I said to you before, we don't believe in sugarcoating things. We jump right in, and the truth is the truth, and open, honest, direct. You don't have to worry about what you said or when you said it if you're always open, honest, and direct.
That's right.
So with that, it's time to go towards our lightning round. These will be yes or no questions.
Okay.
I'll ask those. You can say yes or no. And if you're ready, we'll get started.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. Will you support bills like this session's SB 312 and HB 31?
Yes.
Would you remove unconstitutional regulations and permits involving oil and gas exploration, production, and transportation?
Yes.
Do you believe the COVID-19 vaccine is beneficial?
No.
Do you believe there is an establishment that is led by leadership that doesn't always work for the people of Alabama and Montgomery?
Wait, say that, repeat that again.
Okay, so do you believe that there is a political establishment in Montgomery that does not always work in the best interest of the people?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for coming on to us today. I'm going to let you close it out and just tell us if people want to get involved with your campaign, if they want to learn more, share that with them. Let them know where they can find you. Do you have upcoming events that they can come see you and further this conversation? And if you'll just do that, we're so thankful you came on with us.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, indeed, one of the probably the most important event that's upcoming is this Sunday at 5 o'clock at the Florence Lauderdale Coliseum. We are having a candidates forum. That will be where the candidates for District 1 House race and District 2 and our Senate District 5 race. That they will be all involved. Now, I guess I will warn people that the incumbent, Mr. Pettis, declined attending that event. So it'll just be me. There will be question and answer from not only the panelists, but also as they come in the door, the audience will have the opportunity to submit questions that can be asked of the candidates as well. But my information is Mccaney, the number 4, alhouse@gmail.com. That's my email address. That's also my the name of my Facebook page, Mccaney for AL House, or you can go directly to Maurice Mccaney. Either way, a telephone number for those who may want to make direct contact or send me a text is 256 710 7079. I look forward to the interaction with the voters, and there's not a question too hard that you can ask. I know that a lot of people say, well, you don't have a lot of political experience. And I always respond, well, I'm glad because I am a candidate for public service, not politics.
Oh, that's a great statement. And I absolutely, and I know our members will appreciate that because we're sick of politicians.
That's right.
We want people who will represent us, the people, and who will dare defend our rights. So our prayers and blessings are over you as you go forward. Please let us know if you have any questions for Focus on America, if you would ever like to address our membership. I just appreciate your time and you being so open, honest, direct, and willing to jump right in, saying to begin with that ask you any questions. So thank you again. I hope you have a great weekend and be safe on the campaign trail.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much again for this opportunity. God bless all.
Thank you. Be sure and check us out at focusonamerica.us.